All right, welcome back, everybody. It's what you've all been waiting for. This one's finally happening. The trolley problem. Multiple variations of the trolley problem. In fact, I'm excited about this one. To be honest with you, it is alive, so you guys get to do a little bit of interaction. I'm gonna run you through my whole slideshow. I've got like 45 slides ready to go, keyed up, ready to roll. And if you notice in the chat box, you have some options. A will always be do this action, whatever the action may be, whether it be pulling the lever or whatnot. That's going to be A. And then B is going to be doing nothing. All right. Hey, Alex, good to see you. All right. So, real quick, and I may periodically stop and do this as well. If you take a look here, of course, we are in the Trolley Problem live right now. And then our next live is going to be on Wednesday. Looking forward to that one. Just a Q&A show that I hold just kind of on the regular and at that normal time, standing appointment. And then this one is going to be on Friday, trying to knock out some lives, like multiple lives, like 3 each week before Thanksgiving, because I will go dark for Thanksgiving, just to being with family. I'll be traveling. So get that business item out of the way. And so let's pull this up. We're going to pull this up, and I need you guys to help me. So I can see all of your comments in the chat. I know exactly what you're saying. So here, let's go with the classic one. All right. So I'm numbering these, right? Some of them don't have numbers because they're not meant necessarily to be taken seriously. So you'll see as we go. All right. Get that clear. Okay, cool. So here we go. The original trolley problem. Obviously, you have 2 options here. I don't really have to tell you, because if you clicked on this video, you know exactly how the original problem goes. If you do nothing, that is our option B, is going to continue on. It's going to kill those 5 people on the track. If you choose to act, however, it will change the track for the trolley and go on and kill just 1 person. All right, so if you do something, A, it's going to kill 1 person, save 5. If you do nothing, then it's going to kill 5 people and you'll save a life. Maybe save a life. Who knows, right? So actually, let's see. What do you guys think, right? I've got Alex in the chat. I've got other people in the chat. Other people popping in and out. So what do you think? Do you think you should do A or B? Again, A, hey slug. A is going to be you pull the lever. A for action, right? So A is where you pull the lever in this instance. B is where you do nothing. So which one would you rather do? Okay, don't touch it. Yeah. Interestingly, yeah. So, yeah, I hate that this is drawn this way. Of course, these are, original memes, whoever drew them in Microsoft Paint or whatever. I didn't draw it this way. If I would have drawn it, I wouldn't have even put his hand on the lever, honestly. Hey, Taurus, good to see you. So if, because here's the thing, if you pull the lever, you are inserting yourself into the causal chain of events, right? That's option A. If you do nothing, right, I would draw it without your hand on the lever. That means that you're not involved, not yet, right? Okay, so B, Alex says, is this could be harder to keep 4 people alive than 1 if it was a survival situation. All right, so B, doing nothing. That's an interesting rationale. I've never heard it put quite that way. Harder to keep 4 people alive if it was a survival situation. I wonder what you mean by that. So you're going to end up with either, negative 4 people or plus 4 people, because just 5 minus 1, right? At least 1 person has to die. So you can end up with 4 people alive. That is the 5 people. Or you're going to end up with 5 people down, right? Because you saved 1. So this is quite interesting. Before we go further, I want to point out that a lot of people at this point, if I'm giving this in a classroom setting, they're going to try this little strategy, right? As this trolley solution says, flip the switch or slip the switch, right? It's kind of an engineering railroad attempt, right? By flipping it while the trolley's front wheels are passed through, but before the back wheels do, this will cause a controlled derailment, bringing the trolley to a safe halt, right? So this is not allowed in the original trolley problem whatsoever. I'll come back to your comment, Taurus. This is not allowed. The reason why is because, as I say at the title it is a forced decision, right? So many people want to be like, well, I'll run up and he's got his hand on the lever right now, but I'll run up, right? Go back to the original. I'll run and I'll get to the steering wheels and I'll slam on the brakes. Boom, problem solved, right? If you want to be that creative, we could just be more creative about the presentation and say, no, we've put your feet into concrete, therefore you cannot do that. So there's no attempt to modify it that's allowed, right? So like if you want to modify it, we'll modify it for, because it's supposed to force a decision, right? An either or. Are you going to do this, flip the switch, or are you not going to flip the switch? All right, let's see. So time to run and help the single one after pulling the lever. Yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah, this would not be allowed. You can't really do that. It's not touching allowed. Then if I understand, it's not touching it allowed. Then, if I understand, yeah, that's the things. Yeah. So as I said, go back to the original here. I would not even put your hand on that if I'm drawing this, the original drawing, right? I forget how it's originally constructed. Now, a little history lesson. This trolley problem we actually get from two women philosophers, believe it or not. So one is Philippa Foot, a major player in virtue ethics. Philippa Foot, she, very famous 20th century philosopher. She is responsible for originating the problem. And then that was in 1967. And then 1976, another philosopher named Judith Jarvis Thomson comes along in 1976 and coins the term trolley problem and then adds some variations to it and so on. So that's where it comes in the literature, 60s and 70s. And I think, if you go back and read the original characterization of these, you're just not going to have the hand on that. I know this has now become a famous image, the original problem, but I don't think the hand is on there, right? Okay, so at least then I won't be responsible. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I share that intuition, right? So you're saying, you had said earlier, B, right? Because then if you're not touching it and you're just letting go by, right, that I won't be responsible. In other words, I'm not inserting myself into the causal chain of events. Now, here's the thing. You can still be morally responsible for failing to do something that you ought to do. So, for example, if there's a domestic violence situation, near your next door in your apartment, right? And you hear people shouting and shouting, and then you hear, good, it sounds like somebody's getting stabbed or you've gotten shots or whatever, right? And if you choose not to act, that is, fail to act, right? Then you could still be morally responsible for failing to act when you should have acted in that case, right? So there's a really important distinction between act versus let's say action or active versus passive. That's a really important distinction here. Another important distinction, obviously, is the 1 versus the 5. And then another really important distinction here is killing versus letting die. All right. So in the original Philippa Foot article in 1967, this here is her actual target. Like, this is why she brings up this case originally, the original trial. This is why she brings it up, because she wants to show that this is a viable distinction in ethics. Like, it is a difference whether you kill a person actively, like if you flip the switch, let's say, or if you do nothing, you just let somebody die, right? And I'm saying that I believe in that distinction, of course. Everybody should. That's a right distinction. However, that doesn't mean that, it's only morally weighty, let's say, or morally problematic if you do the active thing, if you kill someone, all right? It can still be morally problematic when you do the passive thing and you just let die. That can still be morally problematic, because the question is, did you fail to act when you should have acted, right? That couple was having that argument next door, and you failed to act when you should have acted. In this case, though, the trolley problem, there's a big question mark around whether you should have acted, right? Because if you fail to act, well, what's the alternative, right? Well, it's not so in a moral dilemma, by the way. A moral dilemma is a dilemma because it's not a choice, right? If it were a choice, it'd just be like, if it were an easy option, it would just be like, A is the obvious one. Well, then it would just be called a choice. It's a moral dilemma because there are no good choices here. Like, there's no ideal solution, right? So just to get that on the board. Okay. Okay, this is a good point as well. You're not driving, you didn't tie them down, you should witness and then tell the truth. We're not capable of solving paradoxes by our nature as human. That's fair too, right? So here's the thing, like some people will say, look, I don't want to be forced into this dilemma. So they might do something like this. They might say, let's go to the next slide right here, right? As you can see here, I refuse to pull the lever until there's an option to stop the trolley, right? This failure to act would still be itself an action, right? So like if I'm like, I ask my students, I'm like, raise your hand if you want A to do the action. Raise your hand if you want B to do nothing, to let it kill 5 people. And there will be people who won't raise their hand, maybe because they're still thinking about it, but some of them have told me, well, I just wouldn't choose either. And it's like, well, that lack of a choice is still a choice, because now you're gonna right here. Oh, this is my fault. I took the moral high ground, right? You by failing to act, you still made an action. Okay, so back to the original trolley problem then. Okay, let's see what Tars has to say. There's a lot to do with the modern fact that everyone's mentally ill by childhood trauma. Well, yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, maybe not mentally ill like diagnosable and actually neuroses. Most of us had choices like this to make before full possession of reason. For instance, access to pornography, opportunity to hurt. Okay. Turn of parents to CPS, participating in divorce in court. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. Maybe. That's the thing too. So now that we have more people here, by the way, let's get some votes in. Let's get this. I've got a lot of slides here, by the way. We're only on slide 5, and I got 45 to go through. And we're still just on problem number 1. So let's take a final vote here on problem number 1 and see what you guys think about this. Is it something that you're going to be like, okay, A is act, right? So just it's shorthand again. A is going to equal action. B is going to equal no action. That's refraining from action. You're not going to do anything. So just taking a vote, showing up in the chat here. I see a B. Okay, no problem. Yeah. B. Okay, Andrew says B. Sluxzilla says B. Alex says B. Tar says A. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when I take a vote in class, No Cakewalk says A. Good to see you all, guys. So when I take a vote in class, I typically get the majority, like we're talking vast majority of students, to say A, act, because they're very utilitarian in their thinking. So they want to pull the lever. They want to save those 5 people, because to them, their reasoning is very simple. More people who die means more harm in the world. It's very utilitarian, right? It's very consequences driven. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so this is called the actual trolley problem, how it's going to be. You see, you are no longer at the lever. You're just on the track. So this is actually true, by the way. This is actually true. Let me explain. So in utilitarianism, the scope of the moral action is everybody involved, right? For greatest number for the greatest good, right? Greatest good for the greatest number of people, right? That's what utilitarianism says. Do the action that brings about the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So the scope is very wide. It's pretty universal. However, it's also impartial. That is impartial, meaning, like, it doesn't matter whether you are the actor right here at the switch, or whether you're the one line on the track, or whether you're the guy on the single track. None of that matters. So you, in a real true utilitarianism example of the trolley problem, you should be it's completely impartial. Like, you could be any one of these people, right? All right. Okay, objective says, correct choice to pull the lever because it takes courage to act. And courage is virtue versus fear of non-action. Yeah, that's true that courage is an action. Well, hold on. Whoa. Sorry, you didn't say that. I was about to say, no, it's not true that courage is an act. Courage is a virtue, of course. It's true that courage is a virtue. And it does take courage to act, but that merely alone shouldn't be the decider. It takes courage to do an evil action as well, right? So, and you could have courage to rob a bank, right? You could have courage to to commit Grand Theft Auto. Like, those things do take courage as well. That doesn't mean that an action is always better than a non-action. All right. Right here, lives do not entirely require action, according to the Diamond Sutra. Okay, I wouldn't know anything about that. Trolley problems are evidence that there isn't always a single universally correct moral answer to a problem. That's true, yeah. Yeah, this is a good point, right? So if you're a Christian, all these people have human worth and human dignity. They are made in the image of God, right? And you can see Jesus in them, so there's a theological point there. So if you're a Christian, like this probably hits a lot harder. It's not just, you know, is a hedonist or as a utilitarian, is perhaps somebody who believes morality is socially constructed. This may be an easier question. It's an easier dilemma, right? And so this also brings up the fact that I have to tell my students, like, if you don't care about people, this is not a dilemma for you, right? Think about like that very popular thought experiment, which was a real life thought experiment, right? Should I turn in Jewish people who are hiding from Nazis when the Nazis come knocking at my door, right? That was a real life moral dilemma for people, namely one person named Corrie ten Boom, who, and so for Corrie ten Boom, let's just take her for example. It was only a moral dilemma for her because first she valued honesty to the point that she didn't want to lie. Okay, like if you weren't an honest person, it wouldn't be a moral dilemma. Then the second horn or the dilemma, like you have to value the life of other human beings, right? If you didn't value the life of human beings, namely some human beings like Jewish people, well, it wouldn't be a moral dilemma. Just tell the truth of where they are, right? So you have to value both of those things in the two horns of the moral dilemma. Otherwise, it's not a moral dilemma for you. Okay. All right. No right answer, depends on your reasoning. Well, I don't know exactly. All right. Okay, so let's keep going. So how is going to be? Some people also say this. So this I actually agree with, because this is just a principle of utilitarianism. You may very well be not at the switch, the lever. You may very well be one of the people tied to the track. Okay. And then somebody says, well, this is the actual trolley problem. How it's really gonna be. There are people with money involved. You're the guy lying on the track with the 5 people, and the guy that switched with money. Billionaires run the world. That's kind of weird. In fact, if you want to just think about the original trolley problem, all right. So we could think of fun variations, and we will here in a little bit. But if you're just thinking of the original trolley problem, we can't start to, because people want to say, okay, well, the one person over here on the single track, that person's your grandmother, and these 5 people are like convicts or something like that. And it's like they want to start to think ahead. But the original 1967 trolley problem it uses, you can use this phrase philosophers use, is all things being equal. Like these people are just random people to you. You don't know anything right here. And this, I would say, is the actual trolley problem. You could be at the switch. You could be right there. And so we'll go back to the original trolley problem. All right. Yeah. Good to see you, Ace Trades. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's keep going. I want to show you a different one, right? So this is the original one, 1967. And I believe this next one might be Judith Jarvis Thompson's 76 paper. Let's actually, no, we got a couple more and then we'll look at hers. Okay, the AI trolley problem. People like to think of this variation as well. This is a meme-worthy one. Again, I'm only numbering them so you can see I went back a slide. This is number 1. Obviously, it's a true trolley problem. This one's not a true trolley problem because it's not something we can decide on. Like, it's just like, maybe, this is a real life concern, right? Because like with self-driving cars, but the reason why this is not like a true problem is because AI itself is not an agent. It can only act, that is, quote, 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 act, scare quote, because it arguably doesn't even have actions, because actions are properly human things. It's only going to act according to whatever a human programs it to do. So this is not a real one. But this one, look at this, guys. Number 2, this is a genuine trolley problem. So this is not Thompson's yet. This is a genuine trolley problem right here. I wonder what you guys think about this one. A or B, look at the pinned comment. A is you do an action. And B, I guess the person drawing this knew and anticipated that if there were only 5 people, it would be an easy trade. So they put, I guess, 12, 15 people over there. So are you flipping the switch on this one? A is you're flipping the switch. B is you're doing nothing. You're killing a lot of people. All right, I want to see people voting here. I see Andrew says A. He's flipping the switch. That's a good way to phrase it here. The innocent versus the ignorant. Did those 15 people vote for Trump? You know what? I don't know. And according to, if we're trying to stay true to the spirit of the original problem, these people are random people to us. We don't know anything about them. Okay. They may not. Okay. B, doing nothing. Oof. Yeah, doing nothing. See, this is A. If you look at the pinned comment, what letter A is for dog. So A is going to be action, whatever the action may be, whether it be pulling a lever, whatever other actions involved in future memes and problems, right? A is always going to mean action, act. B is going to mean do nothing. Okay. You would always save the people, then animals. So here, this introduces a new element. You remember how we talked about active versus passive, and we talked about killing versus letting die? Well, now this introduces a new element, because now this is human versus animal. Obviously, humans are a kind of animal, but we're talking about non-rational animals. A rational animal, humans, versus non-rational animals. What about the environment? That's... I don't know, man. Like, that's it's like, oh, is the trolley gas or electric? Sort of question. Yeah, yeah. Now, this is I share this intuition. To be honest with you, yeah. So you actually think the opposite? Animals have intrinsic value. Now, I think they have intrinsic value, but I do share this intuition also, that they have no intrinsic moral worth. Right. So. Yeah, how do I square that away? Honestly, I think that like they have about as much intrinsic worth, or maybe perhaps a little more intrinsic worth than compared to protecting like a really precious farmland from being urbanized or something like that, or something. I know this is harsh. I know it's harsh. Sorry, guys who are animal lovers. I love dogs myself. Or they have about as much moral worth when it comes to, maybe protecting a forest from being deforested or something like that, because plants are non-rational things, animals are non-rational, and they're not even enough. So my view is this, like, as a Thomist, you have to be properly human as a rational agent in order to be a moral agent. Okay, so you can have moral worth, but it doesn't mean that you are a moral agent, right? And so, as having moral worth could be like, oh, I got my Rolex stolen. You know what I mean? It is like someone says here, it is property to a certain degree, yeah, but it's going to be a certain kind of property, right? Let's see. Ain't nobody to die for animal meta-ethics. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, let's see. Animals still love. That's true. Animals love, but love, again, is not a rational thing, because love is an emotion. It's going to be non-rational. And it just reiterates that, like, look, man, not you in particular, Slug, but like in general, if you in general are like kind of, if you buy into this argument of like, well, if something can love, that means then I shouldn't kill it. Like, I mean, love is, or if something can love, that is, have a passion, then it must be right about something or have moral worth. It's like, to a degree, yeah. But I mean, I don't mean to come off harsh here, but let's see, what type of dog is it? I mean, just look, it looks like a Labrador Retriever. Yeah. Yeah. So if it's that, yeah, yellow lab buddy, who runs miles with me every day. Yeah, no, I get it. This one's hard. So, okay, so final tally on this one. Move on to the next one. This one's hard for me. And then I'll tell you mine. So you vote in the chat. So A or B. You said what you needed to say. So A or B final tally. And you can maybe add some clarification if you need to, but final tally A or B, and then we'll move on. So after I see a couple of these, I'll give you my final tally. You could probably guess it, whatever it is already, based on what I've been saying. Let's see. I think my guess, if I were to think what my students would pick, I think they would have a hard time with this. Now, if you put one person versus one dog, I think they would pick the person every time. I think they would let the person die. Like, I'm be straight up honest with you. But because there's so many people here, I think that they would choose to act and let the trolley kill the dog. But they wouldn't be happy about it. And I think that's kind of where I am. Like, I would flip the switch. I would let it kill the dog. I'm bummed about that, but I think it'd be morally a better decision. That would be my view. Yeah. There's just like, how do you justify letting that many people die? Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so this one's actually in the literature. That last one wasn't. It was just a fun one that was memed. This one's in the literature. Now, I know that the last one we just looked at, there's a dog, and that kind of changes the character of this. We're going to go back to the just like the original one, 1 on the one track, 5 on the other track. Okay. So this is what that looks like. 1, well, he's on a bridge now, 5 on the track. You've probably seen this one. Okay. If you haven't, then, I don't know. Maybe, I would guess many people have seen this. Okay. So again, the choices are, if you do nothing, it's going to keep rolling. It's going to kill 5 people. All right. But you could act. You could lay hands on this guy. And I know it's not drawn to scale, but just trust that when he falls, and I believe you, I have trust in you. I know that you can push this guy over. Maybe he's like just leaning over or something like that. He's off balance, and I trust you can do it. You can push him over. And then, will he stop the trolley, or is it going to kill all of them? Well, no, let's just believe, and just, again, we go with the stipulated case. When he lands splat, it will, in fact, only kill him. The trolley will kill him, and his girth, his weight, his size will stop the trolley. All right. So those are your 2 options. Do nothing, B, and Andrew's already got his vote in, or A, lay hands on this guy and push this guy. Yeah. And there may be variants to this one as well. Yeah, but so this is just the classic one. This is out of the literature. And I tell people, look, if you don't like the name The Fat Man, don't blame me. I didn't call it this. This is the actual name, the official name of the case in the literature. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this comes from Judith Jarvis Thompson, who is also famous for, she coined the term trolley problem, and she's famous for the violinist argument in abortion literature, by the way, Judith Jarvis Thompson. So, okay, so what's your tally on this one, you guys? Okay, so I'll take some commentary, and then we'll go for a final total here. We got 1 vote in already. We got early voting here. This is like election day, early voting, pre-election day. All right, let's see what he says here. Pushing him over is immoral. The level of aggression in the pushing act makes it even worse than choosing to act in the original scenario. Yeah, I think a lot of people will say this, right? So a lot of students still say, that feels wrong. It feels like murder, right? And it does. It does. I guarantee you, and I grant that. Here's the problem with that. We base our laws. Right now, our laws say that this is murder, but we, in this lesson, I usually house it under the utilitarianism ethical view lesson. And so I'm saying, like, we are assessing the ethical view of utilitarianism. And if that ethical view is correct, we need to change our laws in order to reflect that. Right now, our ethical theory, whatever it may be, says that murder is wrong. But hey, if this is the true ethical theory, then we need to modify our laws to reflect that. So yeah, it looks like murder now. It looks like personal, aggression. You're pushing them over. I think you're hitting on something else here also, is that it feels a lot more intimate. Like, I have to lay hands on this guy. Whereas in the original trolley problem, all I did was flip a switch. Like, that's not as intimate. But logically speaking, especially for a utilitarian who does not care about means, he only cares about ends, this makes no difference whatsoever. These are logically equivalent scenarios. It doesn't make a difference whether you don't feel you're closely involved or whether you do. The only difference is that you kill one or kill five. So in this one, and I remind students, look, it doesn't feel like murder, like when somebody flies a drone over a war zone. It just feels like you're playing a video game, right? But in reality, you killed someone, right? So, so whether remote or whether, proximate and intimate, but this does make us think, hey, whoa, our intuitions are being perked up here. Like this seems wrong, right? And so this example I give to show, look, your intimate involvement with this killing of this guy right now is supposed to reinforce that that's the same thing that you're doing right here in the original problem. So just because you flipped a switch doesn't matter. You still killed a guy, right? And so this is trying to reinforce that. You killed a guy here, you killed a guy in the first one, right? Okay, let's see what some of these say. Okay, I would agree you cannot push him. There's some narrative it's both an imperative to jump voluntarily, and you both also walked up the stairs for a reason. So there's a reason it isn't a choice. Okay, so let me dispel this real quick. So again, just like we said in the first example, this is supposed to be a forced choice. So some people are really clever. They're like, run down the steps and jump into the trolley and hit the brakes. Can't do that. We put your feet in cement. Or, if you want to be creative, we could be creative and like presenting the problem. Or, I want to jump instead, right? I mean, well, that's not the problem. Again, we put your feet in cement or something, right? And this is the only way to save 5 people, in other words. And some people even want to say, well, what if I asked him if he wanted to be pushed? Like, I don't know, it's a weird solution, right? But like, what if he was okay with it? What if he jumped, in other words, right? I'm willing to jump. So what if he jumped and he's willing to do that and then save 5 people? Boom, problem solved, right? And that is the same action, 1 versus 5. The relevant moral principle there is obviously consent. And according to utilitarianism, consent does not matter whatsoever. Like, we do not need your consent to, if you're this guy, the fat man, we don't need your consent to push you on the ethical theory of utilitarianism, because it's only the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Nobody asked if you were okay with this. It's the greatest good for the greatest number of people. You don't have to be consulted on what the greatest good is. It's just go along with it, whatever the greatest good is, right? And you could be the person that is on the one track or the fat man and kind of be swept up into that, right? That's one of the pitfalls of utilitarianism. Okay, let's get into a couple of these comments here. All right, so let's see. Utilitarianism is garbage. Yeah. These puzzles are meant to test moral intuitions, like to the max, and see if I use them to in increasing pressure on students to show them. I mean, we'll do the memes and everything, but I mean the legitimate ones. In the literature, I use these to put pressure on students and to test, to really stress their moral intuitions and see if they really still want to hold to utilitarianism. And by the time I'm done with them, they don't, right? Because I'm like, look, this is utilitarian thinking. You agreed with it in the first case with the original trolley problem, like save 5 people, kill 1. What's the problem, right? And the more that these unfold, you'll realize, whoa, I don't want to do that, but doing that, whatever that may be, as we'll see, it's just being a really consistent utilitarian. So at the end of the day, they usually end up giving up on it. Okay, so for what it's worth, I don't think trolley problems are relevant for laws. In practice, you never know 100% of the outcome of your actions. That's true. That's actually, that point right there, you don't know the outcome or the consequences of your actions. That is actually one of the objections to utilitarianism. It is a serious objection to utilitarianism. Because it's supposed to provide me like a really nice, as the ethical theory of utilitarianism is presented to me, it's like, here it is, a really nice way to calculate what I'm supposed to do. The greatest good for the greatest number of people. But huge problem, I don't know what that is. It's not very simple, right? Because I'm supposed to calculate the consequences. I'm supposed to see down the road and into the future. Let me give you an example. So say, for instance, that I am driving home from work and I cut off somebody in traffic, right? Would my action be good or bad? Well, we have to assess it by its consequences, because inherent goodness or badness of actions does not exist on utilitarianism. You can only judge morality by the consequences. So, well, what were the consequences? Well, I piled up about 15 cars. You mean they didn't hit each other, but it slowed down traffic, let's say. So is my action bad? Well, mildly bad, right? So far, let's roll the tape forward because we're not done. Let's suppose that one of those drivers in those 15 cars goes home and murders his whole family. Like a family annihilator. Kills them all, right? This video is not monetized, so nobody report me. Let's suppose this does this horrific thing, right? Murders his whole family, goes to prison. Would my action therefore be a bad action? All I did was cut somebody off in traffic, and not even that guy. Just he was like the 12th car behind me, right? That now means that my action of cutting somebody off in traffic is now really horrific because it led to that consequence, right? Of course, I had no knowledge of this possibly coming about in the future, but it is what it is. That's the consequence of my action. But now, here's another problem with utilitarianism, is suppose we roll the tape more. We roll it forward more. And now, that guy who killed his family goes and writes a best-selling memoir. Like, he changes his life, right? Becomes reformed. He becomes a born-again Christian or something, and he inspires millions with his memoir, right? So that the net good in the world is no longer really, really evil and bad, but now the net good, greatest good for the greatest number of people, now the net good goes up. And so it makes my action of cutting this random guy off in traffic really good now. Like, I've done a good, right? And so the problem is, like, when does it stop? When does it stop, right? And the problem with that is, like, how does it help me evaluate my actions right now? Because I'm supposed to use utilitarianism as a way to go about making actions. So another really interesting outcome, of this problem is that, you remember the guy who murdered his family? He goes off and writes a best-selling memoir. Now, that also means that the action of killing his family is now good on utilitarianism as well. Because, again, great consequences. So, great consequences. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, jeez, that's a plot twist. Yeah. I give that example in class, and people are like shocked. Yeah. Could have saved a lot more people when he was on Earth with all his knowledge. Makes you think he came there. Oh, you're talking about a separate side. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so the fat man. You know what? I don't know what I would do in this case. We'll go on to the next one here in a sec. In this case, I probably would not do anything. But also in the first case, I have strong moral intuitions of not doing anything, of option B, that is, failing to act. Even if it's going to lead to more deaths, at least I, as an individual, would not be morally culpable for it. I don't think I would anyway. That's the intuition I have. Could be wrong about that, right? But again, any moral dilemma is going to be really difficult. If it were an easy choice, it would just be a choice, right? There are two non-ideal solutions. All right, let's keep going. That's the fat man. What's the next? Oh, I'm supposed to show you this because a lot of people will just choose, let's just not kill. And remember, these people are going to die. I just threw that in there for fun, for kicks. All right, what about this one? Do the fat man trolley problem. This is where we get into a little fun. Do you push the fat man to prevent a trolley problem? That's interesting. It's a little interesting. Here's why this is interesting, because do you push the fat man? You are just on the bridge. You're not the guy at the lever. So yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. If I'm going to say no to if I'm going to choose B, and Slug, if I choose B and Alex to the fat man, then I'm likely not going to be tempted to push him in this one. So yeah, I would just, again, be consistent and go with my answer again. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, here's this one. Trolley problem loop. Problem solved. All right, you've probably seen this one. This one doesn't have a number because it's not a real problem. It's just hilarious. Yeah, this is sadism in a nutshell here. Excuse me. Okay, here. let's take this. Okay, so somebody says this. What if we think these hypotheticals this inherently distort what morality is? When we're asked to think about these scenarios in the abstract, being unnaturally rational, and real life, we'd have morally charged emotions. I actually agree with you, right? So like, these are really artificial scenarios, right? And they're not meant to like serve as a precedent that you're going to now go forward and do this every time in a like-minded case, because there are no like-minded cases, right? But here's what they are. They're meant to draw out principles from the cases. They're meant to draw out intuitions from the cases. And the principles are things like active versus passive, right? Do I do the action or do I, refrain from doing it? They're going to be killing versus letting die, so on and so forth, right? And those are going to be the principles you need to draw out of them. And then just to like go with your intuitions, your answers to these often help to like self-diagnose, like what moral theory it is that you hold to without even realizing that you held to them. So, all right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Bystander at the no switch problem. This is funny. You can only shout at other people about what the trolley shivers should do. This is dangerously close to like what we do in politics, to be honest with you, because unless you're like a politician actually making policy changes, this is what you are. There's no switch. You're just on the sideline and you're just watching the carnage unfold and screaming about it. So, all right, let's see what's next. Another funny one. No one here, trolley problem. What happens when you waste time scrolling on social media websites? The lever will stop the trolley, but you aren't there to stop it. In this one, there's no decision. There's no there's no the red ink. Oh, I actually I don't think I put the red ink on that. I think that was already on there. Yeah. The meme ones, they are pretty hilarious. Yeah. So this is hilarious right here because there's no two tracks. There's just one track. And if you had just been a good person, I don't know, if you weren't like, absorbed into your phone, into your social media. Yeah. So let's see what the next one is. I love this one right here. This is not the trolley problem. This is the problem trolley. I'm concerned about Kyle. This one's hilarious. I love this one. I love this one so much. And this is probably one of those that I would like print out and put on my office door on campus. I love this one so much. The problem trolley, Kyle. All right. I'm glad I'm not a politician. Yeah. You go back to this one right here. All the carnage unfold, right? But the politicians are the ones like making the decisions and so on. Okay, let's go forward. Here's the meta trolley problem. And I actually give this one in class and I'm like, what would you do? And it's kind of like the fat man trolley problem, right? It's like, what do you do? And I suppose you're this guy, the big one at the first switch. And I just say this one's for fun. This one's for fun as well. The trolley problem out of control. Like if anybody can like try to make sense of this for me, then right. I mean, I would like, I don't know if I'd sell you $20 right now or something like that. This is ridiculous. Yeah, there is no like right here. Oh, that's, you guys are having your own. Yeah, I'm laughing out loud. Yeah, these are hilarious. I don't know if you've actually like Googled trolley problem memes, but some of them are pretty ridiculous. And some of these I've collected over the years, and this one I think I've collected over the years, and I'm not sure if I can find it again. This one is one I made for the thumbnail. I told you in the description we'd get to it. And the same offer, like if you can actually formulate a coherent story, which would actually be a publishable philosophy thought experiment, then I would sell you $20. This is ridiculous. I mean, we got the 5 people, we got a duck with legs. I mean, that right there already tells me that I know that I'm going to save the 5 people. I'm going to send it to the duck. But apparently now this guy with 6 arms, you've got 8 appendages. You're technically a spider, first of all. But apparently that's you at the lever, and the lever's on the track. And anyway, let's suppose he's off the track. And yeah, this one's ridiculous. Yeah, these have so much going on. Yeah. This is going off the rails, I think. Yeah, because first he's going to hit the banana, And then it's going to hit the switch, right? Whoever did this, it's going to blow through that switch. And then is that enough to stop whoever? Well, it's enough it's going to keep, the momentum is not going to change the track. It's going to hit those 5 people. I don't know what that destroyer of worlds with the eye is. It's kind of like those biblically accurate angels, right? And then the pizza guy with hands, that's terrifying as well. Yeah, acid eye. I would agree. This is somebody who is tripping. Yeah, this looks like a really bad dream, to be honest with you. So, all right, let's keep going. This one's great. Ethics professor. Nobody is in danger. You're a professor from moral philosophy. Do you tie people to the rails to save your job? Yeah, I'll be honest with you with this one. This obviously the hilarity here, the joke, obviously everybody gets. But here's the funny thing as well. I don't know if a philosopher would do anything technically. This is what I tell people. I joke with them, like if I'm at a cocktail party or something. I will say, as if I get invited to cocktail parties as a philosopher, right? It's like, who wants to talk to that guy? But if I do, and if I say I'm a philosopher, and they ask, well, what do you do? What does that mean? I usually have this answer prepackaged. I say, well, I'm a philosopher. I don't actually do anything. I think about doing things, right? It's a nice little quip. And that's largely true. Philosophers in their ivory towers. I mean, it is a stereotype. Not everybody's like this, right? But it is, if we apply that stereotype to this case, a moral philosopher would not do anything except for in his mind. He can imagine people being tied to the rails. I wonder how many, imagine this is just at a railway station, like somewhere in Philippa Foot, who imagined this trolley problem, was English. So let's imagine somewhere in England, you're just an old man philosopher sitting there with your newsboy cap on, just at the train station, watching the trains go by, and in your mind, you having all these wild thoughts and stuff. That's what I imagine. That's what I imagine a philosopher would really do, not actually tie people. All right. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. And the Sims philosophers in the Slacker career track. That's hilarious. Yeah, traumatize my students. Let's see. He would probably just leave it for someone else to solve. Yeah, look, that's a stereotype. And I have to admit that stereotypes are true. Even in so a stereotype is a generalization. Here's a fun lesson, by the way, guys. So a generalization is the same thing as a stereotype. This means that things are generally true, right? It's generally true of philosophers that they are not doers, right? That they are thinkers, that they think from the ivory tower. And it's not true about all of them, but that's the same thing as stereotypes. So, all right. So yeah, I wouldn't do anything. I'd say I'd feel the same way, Professor. Yeah. Let's actually go to the next one here. This one is an important one. All right. So this is the one that this one and then the next one is usually I end class with them, but I like you guys so much. I like you guys so much. I've got 20 extra slides on here. So the trolley problem extended. It's called Room 306, and this is actually in the literature. You may have heard of it. You may not know it by the name Room 306, but as you can see depicted here, you are the guy with the scalpel. You are the surgeon. All right, this is a very serious one. And you have the same exact choice as before, logically identical options. You could kill one person, or you can do nothing and let 5 people die. You see all the 5 people in the beds back there. They are all going to die. Because at the end of the day, so let's start with this guy, the one sniffing the flower. He's having a great day. He's just coming into your office for a checkup, and he's going to live and go home at the end of the day. At least he thinks so. Whether he does is actually up to you. You could do nothing and let 5 people die. Each one of these 5 people, as you can see in the buckets below them, they all need an organ transplant. So one guy needs a heart, one guy needs, a kidney, liver, lungs, you name it, right? This guy who is sniffing the flower, he just happens to come into your office. He is a good fit. He's a blood type match. He's an organ donor match and all of the above, right? So the question now is, do you A, act to harvest this man's kidneys and all of his organs, or do you B, do nothing and let 5 people die? Those are the only 2 options. You only have 2 options. A is is kill this guy, harvest this 5 word. And I remind students, obviously they're like horrified by this, right? So like Taurus as well, he's saying, yeah, definitely do nothing. Yeah, they're horrified by this because they think, if I were to kill that guy, that's murder, right? And so again, I just remind them, look, it feels like murder, but again, like we're asking whether this is the correct moral or ethical theory. And if it is, then we should base our laws on the correct ethical theory. So, if we just fixed our laws according to correct ethical theories, then this would just be legal and licit. There would be nothing wrong with it. So do nothing. Yeah. And I remind them also that this, again, is logically identical from before. Act and one person dies. Just like in the trolley problem. I flip the switch, only one person dies. Do nothing and 5 people die. Like that's the same exact setup, right? And it's so as for right here, it's about consent. So again, according to consequentialism and utilitarianism, right? Consent does not matter. Consent does not matter. I don't have to ask this guy whether he would like to be an organ donor and end his life right now. I don't have to ask that whatsoever on utilitarianism. Why? Because it does not matter. It is impartial with respect to who is going to be sacrificed and who is going to live. It's impartial. It all comes down to what is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. It's not, hey, what is the greatest good for the greatest number of people, except for Ace, who gets to decide what the greatest good for the greatest number of people is. That's not how it goes. It's what is objectively the greatest good. And good here could mean something like the greatest amount of pleasure. It could mean something like the most amount of welfare or well-being to all people involved, such that they're safe, whatever it may be. But that answer will be objective, right? Hey, Haley, good to see you. I'd agree with you, Ace. Yeah, so again, like consent, and I remind my students again, like consent is an important moral principle, but it's not an ultimate moral principle, by the way, right? Because you can consent to all kinds of terrible things done to you. Like this guy could consent to this. It doesn't mean that it makes it morally good that he's doing that he's giving his consent. So on utilitarianism, consent, there is no such, and this is a huge mark against utilitarianism. The only moral principle on utilitarianism is that the good action is doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. That is the only moral principle. There is no moral principle about consent. There's no moral principle about what's fair. None of that. None of that applies. There's only one moral principle. So it's very, very simple. Yeah, and it is an ultimate moral. Well, if you're talking about the greatest good for the greatest number of people on utilitarianism, it is. Consent is not on, neither on utilitarianism or in ethics in general. I don't think any. I can't. I would understand. Like, so if let me ask you this. So if I said, let me give you the example of. Let me give you the example of Armin Maiwis. All right, so Armin Maiwis, or however you say that in German, he is sitting in prison now because he was convicted of killing and eating another man. He killed and ate another man. All right, so let me show you this. Right here. Armin Maiwis. He's a German cannibal, right? But the guy that he actually ate, he chopped up and ate, he met online. This was like early 2000s, 2002 or something like that. And the guy that he met on some weird internet forum, dark web, who knows, even before dark web. And the guy that he met, I forget his name. Here it is, Bernd Brandes, consented both to being killed and consented to being eaten. So he consented to that. That doesn't make it good. Like, we're saying that consent is not an ultimate principle in the sense that just because I gave my consent does not make the action good. The action is still terrible, what he's done, and he's still sitting in prison. Yeah. March 2001 is when that happened. So, okay. Ultimate moral principle. So Edith Sparks says this. You can say the same thing about other theories. No. I'm not sure what I said about that. I think you're just talking about the consent thing, whether it's not an ultimate moral principle. Yeah, on any moral theory, I don't think it would be an ultimate moral principle. right here. Daniel says, consent is paramount. Using your agents to take away another's agency is a contradiction. To call that morality. Yeah. So look, I agree on any moral view is consent is a really important feature, right? But it's not an ultimate feature. It's not an ultimate principle. It's a very important principle. It's not an ultimate principle. Okay. Unlike utilitarianism, it considers not the pursuit of happiness in any individual. Or it doesn't consider, yeah. That's true, actually. Yeah, this doesn't account for individuals, like individual flourishing, like on virtue ethics, right? There is a version of utilitarianism called individual utilitarianism. And most of what we've been talking about with utilitarianism on this distinction, those people would call this social utilitarianism. It's the greatest good for the greatest number of people. There is a version of utilitarianism on which it's just the greatest good for me, and that would just be something like hedonism. I wouldn't call that utilitarianism, but there's just that. Cameron says, doubt there's only one moral principle. Yeah, so yeah, and on utilitarianism is there is just one ultimate moral principle, just to maximize, can be maximize utility. Here's what it is. Yeah, it is that, right? And so maximize utility, but utility, what does that mean? Is it going to be usefulness in what sense? Well, usefulness in a pragmatic sense, usefulness in a pleasurable sense, usefulness in a well-being sense, right? So they need to have a value of the good or a theory of the good. They need to answer what is it that's good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's true. This is another really important distinction, is called informed consent, right? All those people in World War II, most of them did not want. They didn't want what they were getting to, yet they gave consent. That's true. Yeah. So in medical ethics, we often like to talk about informed consent. And that informed term there in the front is doing a lot of work, because it can't just be that your consent. This is like the same thing with like puberty blockers and sex change operations on minors. It's like they can consent, but they don't have informed consent, right? Even with pedophilia and sex between adults and children, like it's a terrible thing. Technically, from a moral perspective, it would be evaluated as this: they can consent, but they cannot have informed consent, namely because the reason is not fully developed, right? They can say yes, use the words like this, they can give consent, but far more important than just saying yes is being informed about what you're saying yes to. That's a critical distinction. Thanks for bringing that up, Alex. All right. Hey, good to see you, Neo. Yeah, Kant just has follow categorical imperative. Hedonism just has maximize pleasure, minimize pain. Egoism is maximize self-interest, right? So on many of these modern ethical theories, you just have one moral principle. It's really fascinating. After the store, do I need anything? I would like some orange juice. My wife stopped buying me orange juice, and yeah, I would like that, please. Aristotle has do what achieves eudaimonia. Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, I suppose you could put it in those terms if you wanted like a ultimate moral principle. This would be the one. Now, I've been phrasing this in terms of a single or ultimate moral principle. This could be the ultimate moral principle, but is there a single moral principle? Obviously, in virtue ethics, there's a ton of moral principles, right? About balancing out things with prudence and so on. So there's going to be a lot of things, virtues and vices, principles in play, but they will on eudaimonia and virtue ethics just be one moral principles. Yeah, we will see this actually about justice. This is actually in my next case right here. Actually, let me show you this comic before I keep going. I'm afraid that kidney went to someone who can write code. This is what you get on utilitarianism, by the way. Like, again, like there is no consent on utilitarianism because it's not a moral principle on this ethical view. So now if that is new to you, if you're hearing that for the very first time, welcome to utilitarianism. Like that is the actual view. And you might be like, well, I didn't know that. I don't agree, maybe. Okay, you might not agree, but you wouldn't be a classical utilitarian. And it would still be open to you, let's say, to have hybrid views, right? Of being and just because you have utilitarian or consequentialist thinking on your virtue, on your ethical view, does not mean that you have to be a utilitarian or a consequentialist. You would just think in that certain way. Like you could be a virtue ethicist and still think with consequentialist thinking. It wouldn't make you utilitarian or consequentialist. Okay, I know that I said a lot there. If you need to refresh that, just rewind it. All right, pulp or no pulp. I like some. I love on orange juice, and it's like some pulp. Like I love that. That's how I say it in my mind all the time. It's not just like some. It's like some pulp. It's so funny. All right, we're talking about orange juice. This is great. All right. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay. This one is one I came up with, but I hate that it cut off, and I tried to redo it to where it wouldn't cut that off, but here we are. Okay, as you can see in the description, sheriff in the town mob. A sheriff is trying to quell a large, violent, angry, riotous town mob who wants vigilante justice to lynch someone in the Deep South. All right. So in this thought experiment, you are the sheriff. And again, logically speaking, the setup is the same. If you are a utilitarian, this solution is really easy, right? Here's the options, A or B. B, you do nothing, right? Again, because A is the action. So B, you do nothing. And what if you do nothing? Again, they want to lynch this guy. So they're going to string him up. No due process, no trial, no nothing. Or A, you could choose to act, in which case you would give your permission. You would bring him in to your custody, and then you would, I suppose, promise that he's going to get killed, or you would just give your permission and consent and just like remove your guards and deputies, whatever it may be, and then they get to go, lynch him. So A is do something. In this case, one person dies, just like logically speaking, the trolley problem. Or B, do nothing. And then, well, potentially, again, on utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number of people, potentially there will be far more harm being caused by doing nothing, right? Just like the trolley killing 5 people. Well, in this case, they could have a riot. They could be more people killed, more people lynched. They could come after your deputies in their sleep. They could come after you in your sleep, right? And they're so angry, what will placate them is just killing this one guy. So why not just make that trade-off? Now, if you're a utilitarian, you will make this trade-off in a heartbeat. You will make this trade-off immediately. You will say, absolutely, option A, every single time. I get to sacrifice one person for the good of the whole. That's exactly what you did in a trolley problem. So, what do you guys think about this one? What would you choose? We know what a utilitarian would choose. They're definitely making that trade-off. So Alex says this, if I was a sheriff, I would do nothing. Then I can make up a fake story. That's true, but again, they might come after you. They're going to come after your family. They're going to come after your sheriff's deputies. And so perhaps, possibly, right? Or at least there's that fear of that. And so, do you give in to the mob? And obviously, most people at this point, by the last thought experiment of room 306, again, I describe this as like I go through these in like descending order. I hit them this way. I have 6 listed here, but I really only do 4 in class. I say number 1, original. Number 2, the fat man. Number 3, room 306. And number 4, the sheriff and the town mob. Okay. And then by this time, they are realizing, oh no, that's what a utilitarian would do and say. Like that's what a utilitarian would do in order to be consistent utilitarian? Yes, that is what a consistent utilitarian would do. Absolutely, every single time, not even blinking. And so they, of course, start to relinquish their grip on being a utilitarian. They're realizing, crap, there are other principles in play. We talked about consent last time, but here's one really important principle: justice. A really important moral principle, justice. On utilitarianism, there is no justice. There's no such thing as the moral principle of justice on utilitarianism. There's no, hey, let's do the right thing here. And some people will ask, they'll say, well, what did the guy do who's going to get lynched? Do y'all think that matters? I asked my students that. Do you think it matters what the guy did? I would admit it is a bit biased against utilitarianism, but I've told you in the past I'm biased, but I try to be as fair as possible. And then when I go through my utilitarianism lecture, I give all the goods and all the bads. And then the actual trolley problem examples are in the objections portion of the lecture. I don't do as many. As I said, I only do 4 of them. But the trolley problems do serve as objections to utilitarianism, believe it or not. And yeah, they would just, in other words, the objection here would be that it violates moral intuitions that are deeply held and that you shouldn't give up. Okay, right here. So it's not true utilitarians have their own definition of justice. Yeah, it would be something like this. What's fair is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And so, well, that's a twisted sense of justice because this guy's not getting due process. He's not getting a trial. Like, that would be a completely different conception and understanding of justice than what we use in our legal systems. Right? You guys are in different areas of the world. In the U.S. and England and Canada, very similar legal systems. In the sense that they usually, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, have due process. Like, doesn't matter what you've done, you get a trial. There's no vigilante justice. Like, there's no such thing as that. We're not in the wild, wild west here. So, yeah, do you guys think that it matters what he did? Would that change your view? Like, because some people are like, what if he did really something terrible? What if he killed a woman or raped somebody, graped somebody, stalked into their house, broke in or whatever, right? And then of course, like, they get really heated up about this. They're like, yeah, I guess there's a problem. That's true. Here's the thing. Like, you don't know if they did or not. You don't know, because what evidence do you have? What evidence do you have that this guy did anything? You don't have any evidence. You weren't there, so you have no direct empirical evidence. You only are going off the testimony of what these people who are very angry are bringing to you, saying that he did it, right? That's exactly, though, what a trial is for, is to actually go through the evidence in an objective and unbiased manner. So without a trial, you don't even know what he did or whether he did it, right? All you have is allegations. So, it would seem, and also this builds terrible precedent. Let me go up here. Why would utilitarian accept moral intuitions or even the framing of the counterexamples so far as they remove from usual experience? It is my contention that the people who think that they are utilitarians, at least, are not consistent utilitarians. They might use some utilitarian thinking because it is intuitive, and there's something, as I'm going through ethical theories, right, in a bid to be fair, right, biased but fair, I will also not only say what's it got going for it and objections, but I'll also, towards the end of the objections, say, here are some redeeming factors. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Don't throw the whole system out. And one thing I would say that we shouldn't just completely toss about utilitarianism. I mean, we can toss the theory itself as far as it's formalized, but one thing I would say is that what it gets right is that consequences do matter in moral reasoning. That's it. But what it gets wrong is that they're the only thing that matter. Okay. And so why would they accept moral intuitions? I think that my students have moral intuitions and accept them after doing this for a long time, working through with them, talking with them and stuff, and teaching this and in the literature and everything. So this is not just, what's it called? Just hearsay or something like that. It's, a series of sources here. But yeah, so all that to say, through all those pieces of evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, I do believe that people generally are not as utilitarian as they think. I also think this about moral relativism. I don't think people are as moral relativists as I think they are. Let's see, go down. Okay. Catholic, would you have to go with what best goes with your Christian values? I think so. Yeah. The problem here, there are certain principles in moral reasoning when it comes, like in moral theology. There's certain moral reasoning principles. And one of these is equiprobabilism. That's a really interesting one. Equiprobabilism. I think that's the word. Let me bring this back up. Yeah. I didn't expect to get into equiprobabilism today, but here we go. So right here, equiprobabilism is a theory, put that into the chat, moral theory in Roman Catholic theology that holds that when two conflicting courses of action have equally probable arguments for and against them, a person is permitted to follow either argument. This is an outcome, I think, Alphonsus Liguori. And so this goes, so this is an outgrowth of probabilism, on which it allows acting on a less safe opinion if it's solidly probable. That right. So let's say that there's some dilemma, right? And let's say it's not a trolley problem or a sheriff in a town mob. Let's say it's something like, should I use contraception or should I not? Or a really bland one like, should I kneel to take the Eucharist or should I stand to take the Eucharist, right? This is in Catholic moral theology. So if there is a less safe opinion that is like a dogmatic or doctrinal issue, that is like one that's not very popular, I suppose. This is what AI means by this. If that opinion is solidly probable, in other words, they can make a good case for it, and it's probabilistic that it is true, then it is morally permissible to take that less common opinion. Equiprobabilism says both of them are morally permissible if they have equally probable arguments for and against them, a person is morally permitted to follow either argument. So this is an improvement upon the last one, because it's just like, hey, what can I get away with if this one has a probable argument for it? Like, can I get away with doing contraception if I can find a good argument somewhere? This one is an improvement upon that, because it says both of them have to be really good arguments, or probable arguments, that is, in which case like either option is going to be permissible, morally speaking. So going back to here, I suppose you could say, well, you would have to find some principles. Like the principles in conflict here are the life of an allegedly innocent person, because again, you don't know if they're innocent truly. And then the violation perhaps of due process and justice and so on and so on. Like this would be a hard case to frame and evaluate in equiprobabilism, because you'd have to find a case where doing either side is equally as probable. Yeah. So I did not expect to get into that, but that's the kind of reasoning you would have to do, and I'm not very good at it. So, all right. How do those intuitions access moral truths given utilitarianism? Utilitarianism, I think that it's going to be a very naturalist. But again, like you don't necessarily have to be a utilitarian in order to use utilitarian thinking. So we'd have to distinguish that. So, but yeah, if you are a utilitarian, I think just by default, you're going to be a naturalist. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that. Struggle to see the benefit of using one ethical framework for everything seems flawed. A hammer is a good tool, but can't do everything. Yeah, I share some sympathies with that. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's keep going. Sheriff and Town Mob. I think most people right here, as you guys are picking up on, yes, it's picking on utilitarianism. But again, like this would be the area of the lecture or discussion in class where we are by this time in the objections to utilitarianism. These are not meant to be friendly to utilitarianism. Neither is the trolley problem or its variations. But all that philosophical stuff aside, let's get into the fun part. Let's look at our next one. This is one that I don't do in class. Okay. Yeah, of course, Alex. Yeah, that would be a primary principle. So I'm just getting to like moral theology, moral reasoning, way out of source. But yeah, just like the basic, like first thing you need to do is like, what would Jesus do? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that. Like, that's probably what I should have started with. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So this one, Moneymaker. I want to see what you guys think about this one. This is supposed to be like a funny one, but I went ahead and made it like a legitimate number. I gave it number 7. I think by the time I get through all these, I think they're about maybe 15. Okay, so we're on number 7. We're about halfway through. but only about 15 slides. So we're going to go hit here. All right, so in this one, all 8 billion people on Earth except for you are tied to this track, one track. You can stop the trolley at any time by pulling the lever. But for every person the trolley runs over, you get $1 million. You will not be held accountable, that's a huge assumption, for any of the deaths caused. I guess on this thought experiment, God doesn't exist. How long do you wait before pulling the lever? I mean, that's a huge assumption, right? Like, if you won't be held accountable, in other words, like, I suppose, like, if I'm thinking through this, I suppose God doesn't exist and there are no legal consequences for this. And if there's no consequences, then I also suppose probably human dignity and moral worth don't exist either. And so why wouldn't you? But I don't know. What do you guys think? It's a bit like the Hunger Games, win prizes, off people and win prizes. Why wouldn't you? Right? I mean, you may have to make this big assumption, right? I want to see what you guys think on this. A is I guess the action would be you stop the lever, right? You pull it, you stop it, right? That's what it says right here. You can stop the trolley anytime by pulling the lever. So who's pulling the lever? That would be option A. B is doing nothing. Or you could just put into the chat, like, how many millions of dollars do you want? So for me, if I go with that huge assumption for held accountable for any of the deaths caused, well, first of all, I can't. First of all, I'll go with my real one. Obviously, my real one is going to be $0. If I go with the buying into this massive assumption that I won't be held accountable, then, well, you can't kill all 8 billion of them, because then you can't use any money. Okay. Because then you'd be in like a wasteland, right? And there'd be no markets left for you to do anything with them. So I don't know. I mean, how many billions? I'd take a couple billion. Yeah, I'd take a couple billion. Yeah, Elon's about to be a trillionaire, I heard. So enough to be a trillionaire. But here's the thing. Evil twist is, like, you don't know these people again. Like, all things being equal, these could be any random people. So it's like they're almost like landmines placed. Like, it could be like your loved one in the first 17, you know? Yeah, if you'd kill people for money if there wasn't a God. Let me frame this correctly. So would me, right here, good to see you, Slug. Take care. Would me, with the character and my character as I am right now, do this? No, I wouldn't. But if I'm this guy, hypothetically, and there is no God, I'm this way because I actually do believe in God. And I formed my character in such a way to be a moral person. So I guess, you know what? I guess certain possibilities would be out of reach. So I don't know if placed into this situation, it's not nice to theorize about this, but you might be right, Samani. I don't think it'd be an open possibility for me to actually pull this, given my constitution and the way I'm constituted, the way I'm built, the way my character is shaped. I don't think I could actually let these people die. Yeah. And then that'd be on your conscience, right? This is what a lot of my students say, even with the original Trolley Problem and Fat Man and so on. They say, that's going to be on my conscience if I push that guy. And it's like, well, if I'm a utilitarian, again, like, okay, assuming if I'm a consistent utilitarian and there is no God, and let's also assume that I don't have a character that I now do because I'm a Christian and believe in God, then I would just let it go. But those are all massive assumptions. And so, yeah, not being held accountable is compatible with God's existence, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know about this, honestly. I think it's logically compatible. Like, I understand the words as they're written. I don't think it's metaphysically possible because of God's being the ground of goodness and morality. So for him to just say, oh, well, forget about it. I'm just going to let this slide. It's arguably what God does when he forgives us upon, salvation. But still, this is a difference between a Catholic and a Protestant view. The Catholic view of purgatory, for example, there is corporal punishment, or sorry, there's still the penalty of sin, right? So I can get the justice and everything, my debt settled, but I would still be the kind of person that would have done that thing, right? So, and that's what purgatory is for, is to like refine the fire and burn that off. But yeah, consistent with God, compatible with God existing now. Yeah, I would have to think more about this. Look, the God I believe in the Catholic God, who is absolute goodness, all love, and all justice, this would be incompatible with that God existing. So the idea that is of not being held accountable for this, because again, he's all justice, so he would not he would not allow this to not be justified. But although you might say, someone might say, well, God could just forgive you. Yeah, because it was settled. God was a just God, the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. Right. So I believe non-theistic Buddhists would just let it go. I don't know enough about non-theistic Buddhists. Sounds that way. I don't know enough, so I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. All right, brain devout trolley problem. This is an interesting one, right? So on the track, bottom track, one guy. On the top track, that guy's brain, which has been surgically removed, kept alive in a vat, and remotely connected to his also still living body, such that he cannot tell the difference. Okay, so either way, this guy is going to feel it, or at least have the sensation of the trolley coming towards him, right? So he can't tell the difference. What does he mean, can't tell the difference between being the brain or being the body? Okay. I guess you wouldn't have an experience of being the brain. It would just be like an extension cord from your head. So I guess what this is trying to say, he cannot tell you just feel like you are the body lying there, right? That is you. Obviously you're going to get brain death if you pull the lever, and if you do nothing, it will kill the body, but your brain would still be alive without inputs, but you would still be alive. So, what would you do? This is a hard one, actually. This is a hard one. What do you guys think about this one? Thoughts on this one? It seems like people do value the brain very preciously, more so than the body. And so you might think with like sufficient medical technology, you can implant that brain just into another body. We don't currently have that medical technology, but there's that intuition. But you'd lose all of your body. And so in the current medical technology, there is a massive chance that you will never be plugged back in, and that the death of the body does mean the death of the brain, because there's nothing to plug into. So, but killing the brain does mean automatic death. So most all bioethicists agree that brain death just is death. It's just cessation of all existence, right? Because your consciousness is gone. So Zamani says here, I value the body more. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why. Is it like on philosophical grounds, or just because you work out a lot? Yeah. I imagine if I was like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I would probably value my body a lot higher than I do now, but it wouldn't be on philosophical grounds that I do this. Yeah. Okay, so we know the brain is the seat of consciousness. That's true. So goes the brain, then that's going to kill the person. We know that. But if the body gets killed, I think here's the thing, like it might be a mercy to go and flip the switch and let the brain die, because that would be automatic death. If you killed the body and let the brain live, I think it'd be a prolonged death. But again, throw in the principles here of active killing versus letting die. And I think when all said and done, I would have to just do nothing. I would have to do nothing. Yeah. I would choose option B, do nothing here. Because of that principle of letting die is, I think, less morally culpable than actively killing. So in general. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is where they get fun. Grandfather paradox trolley. There are some philosophical ones that like are just philosophical mashups, right? So you know about the grandfather paradox. Do you time travel back in time and kill your grandfather? That sort of thing, right? So here it goes. You're a time traveler. A runaway trolley is heading to kill 5 people. If you pull the lever, only 1 will die. Okay, just as before. But the person on the track is your grandfather, and your parents haven't been born yet. What if you pull? Will you pull the lever? Basically, what do you guys think about this? So it doesn't have any arrows here, but that guy on the top track is your grandfather. I don't know why this guy is like dressed up, and they should have dressed up the guy on the track as being like an old man or something like that. So the guy on the top track in this variation is your grandfather, and if you kill him, well, I guess I would again, my intuition, my strongest intuition here is that letting die is not as morally culpable as killing actively. So I have a strong intuition just in the original trolley problem to not pull the lever at all and just to let it kill 5 people. Like, and again, let it kill 5 people. So, if I'm going to say no to that, I think what this setup does, the grandfather paradox trolley, is it's challenging utilitarians even more. Like Cam, Either Spark was in here saying, oh, these are challenge to utilitarianism, and yes, they are. And this one, I think, displays that, because I think the setup is such that we already knew you were going to switch it to the one track, so let's make it harder. In other words, we already knew you were a good utilitarian, so let's make it harder for you. So I think everybody kind of understands that a utilitarian would choose this way, and they're trying to kind of twist the screws on the utilitarian. But me not being a utilitarian, I wouldn't be tempted to pull the lever at all. Oh, I would let it kill the 5 people, I assume, if you're not doing anything. I would even pull it if the replacements were switched. That's interesting. Yeah. So again, because you're saving your grandfather in this case. Yeah. And that's the familial connection as well. Not only familial connection, but again, like, this is supposed to be a time travel scenario where if your grandfather dies, then you cease to exist. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. Here's another variation. The hedonist trolley problem. This is ridiculous. The hedonist trolley problem. Number 10. The track is heading towards B. If you pull the lever, it will switch to A, but it won't do this totally sick loop-de-loop. Yeah, that's true. It's in effect, you're killing yourself along with your grandfather. Yeah. What do you guys think about this one? Again, like, this is a variation that twists the screws on the utilitarian. They know when setting this up that the person likely going through these problems is going to choose A to flip the switch to save 1 and not, let 5 live, right? So they are twisting the screws on this. I mean, in a funny way, sure, but like, what do you guys think about this? Look, I already was gonna. This makes it sound actually okay. So when I go, my default answer to the trolley problem probably is going to be B, right? But this kind of makes me feel bad about choosing B. I'm gonna be honest with you, because like, it's gonna look like I chose it because I wanted to see the loop de loop. So yeah, I don't get this one. Yeah, this is again, like, it twists the screws on the utilitarian. It's almost assuming that the utilitarian look is going to obviously flip the switch. So what if you're a utilitarian and a hedonist? It's meant to be a little bit of a joke. Well, are you going to be tempted, as the utilitarian does, to switch it to A? Or are you going to be tempted, as the hedonist is, to get more pleasure in your life and get that sick loop-de-loop, even if it means killing more people? That's all it is. It's one of these, like, insider stupid philosophy jokes that aren't actually that funny. All right. Let's keep going. All right. This one is super interesting. All right. This is the veil of ignorance. I forget. I think this is Rorty. Who is this? Yeah, Rawls. Yeah, Rawls. John Rawls. Veil of ignorance. Right here. So yeah, I think it is just for entertainment as well. Okay, so this one actually is less for entertainment and more out of seriousness. John Rawls has this view called the veil of ignorance. You don't really know who you might be in a situation, so you should try to be the external observer. And right here, It says, you don't know where you'll be in the trolley problem. However, you have to choose the scenario in advance. Regarding personal interest, would you like the lever to be pulled? And that's a key component of it as well. Personal interest. Yeah, so the funny thing about this setup is that this is exactly what utilitarianism requires to begin with. Like, because what I said at the very beginning, utilitarianism isn't impartial. You don't get to just be the guy at the lever. You could be, the next time, you could be one of those on the single track. You could be the guy driving the train. You could be the guy who tied these people up. You could be the guy, any one of those five. So it's meant to be funny because it's like, oh, we're going to tie it to this other popular philosophy concept. But in reality, this is just what a utilitarian is supposed to do with the setup anyway. Yeah, right here. So, valid ignorance is a terrible way of making decisions. Let's see. Sorry. It centers self-interest above all else. Yeah, that's interesting as well. Yeah, I don't know much as much as I should about it. Obviously, I just know the part that says there should be a veil of ignorance. You shouldn't know who it's going to affect or what person you should be. And then I think the next step is then, just as this says, imagine you could be any one of these people regarding your own self-interest, then what would you do in this case? Like, in other words, it's like this entire massive conjunction. You could be the guy at the lever, or you could be, I guess, a disjunction, or you could be the guy on the one. So given all that, which would be the best scenario for you? And so it's almost like this like empathic view of doing moral reasoning, right? You're trying to be more empathic in your reasoning, imagining yourself in the other shoes of the other, but still it's very kind of central and personal and selfish because you're still thinking about yourself, which I guess little selfishness is unavoidable as well because you are a self, you're operating as a self. So yeah. All right, you would have to pull the lever in this one. It's 5 versus 1. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about this. Okay, you say save the many for the few. Your hand is already in the lever. Inaction is the same in action at that point. Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, I've said at the very beginning, I hate that. So obviously this is a modified. Somebody took the original trolley problem meme or comic or whatever this started as. I suppose, they have millions and millions of this image online and of the original one. It's hard to tell like who was the original artist on it. That'd be an interesting thing to track down. But whoever the original artist was, I have beef with them. They made the image wrong when they drew your hand on the lever. They should not have drawn your hand on the lever. I think in the original literature, you were not involved, right? Because A, you put your hand on the lever. Okay, now you're involved. B, well, you're just not involved. You're not in the causal chain of events. So your hand's not on it. So I think it's inaccurately drawn. But supposing then you do put your hand on the lever, then you are in the chain of events and your reasoning here is spot on. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. The Sisyphus trolley problem. This is kind of ridiculous. This is just for fun. It says, in case you can't read it, the lever only changes the course of the track for 5 seconds before switching back to the first track where it would kill 5 people. You must keep pulling the lever in order to save these people. Neither you nor the captives need to eat or sleep because this is a Greek myth or something. There's no one else nearby, no way of leaving or reaching help. Do you keep pulling the lever and hope that somehow these circumstances will change, or do you decide this is an inherently futile act and that to keep all of you in this state of imprisoned limbo for all eternity was more cruel than death? So obviously it's like talking about the Sisyphus, myth of Sisyphus, and you just keep rolling the rock up the hill, right? You're rolling the rock up the hill, and you just got to keep doing the job, keeping the job. There's never any thankfulness or any payoff to it. You just keep doing it. Now, yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder... Yeah, have many conversations prayers. That's interesting. Yeah. So I think I would keep flipping the switch. It would take, impressive amount of timing, but you could time it. Apparently you're never going to eat or sleep, but yeah, this is fascinating. I think I would keep flipping the switch as long as possible because you are saving these people, and then hope against hope, which I guess is hopeless in this case. hope against hope that you would maybe somebody would come by and save you, right? Because again, after all, if you're like don't need to eat or sleep, then you don't necessarily, it's not going to bother you at all that you have to keep doing this. You're not going to like run out of energy or anything. All right, let's go to the next one. Theseus, the ship of Theseus, right? This is another philosophy mashup. The ship of Theseus. Okay, let me just run through the problem and then we'll talk about the ship of Theseus, for example. If you do not pull the lever, one person will be crushed to death instantly down on the bottom track. If you do pull the lever, the trolley will divert into a 1,000-mile stretch of track with one person tied down at the end of it. Okay, so prolonged death. But if as the trolley rolls down this 1,000-mile track, a crew systematically switches out every piece of the original trolley with a replacement part, did the trolley which you diverted kill the man? Okay, that's a nice twist because it's like, first of all, there's the question of like whether you should flip the switch or not. But here's like the almost promise or like the hope that if you flip the switch, obviously some trolley will kill the guy. But there's a kind of a hope that maybe you weren't responsible because it's really not the trolley you sent down that track. That's an interesting twist. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. I see. You're already in a situation by having your hand on the trolley lever. I didn't mean physically touching the lever. Your hand is on the lever just by being there. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it is never explained to us like how, again, because it's a thought experiment, like how you happened upon this. Like you must, I imagine you probably just were walking by and you just happened upon it like that. Yeah. The man who built trolleys, ex-lifes him. Yeah, well, is this philosophy? Who comes up with this stuff? Yeah. You can't just be a bystander and watch evil unfold when you could stop it. That's true. So that's one of these moral principles. So like, here's what I would do, like whether in these silly examples or the original example, whatever it may be, I would, throughout thinking through these, I would I would craft a list of as many moral principles as I could, right? So I've already mentioned the active versus the passive, killing versus letting die. Other things are like do good and do not do harm. That's a good moral principle to live by. Preserve justice when possible. That is, act out of fairness. Like these are all really good moral principles that are like popping up as we talk through these. Another one is this: you can't just be a bystander and watch bad things happen. That is, you should act if you could, and to not act would be a bad thing, right? So like, this is just a matter of like enumerating the moral principles that are relevant here, collecting all the moral principles, in other words. And yeah, that's just one of it. There's a ton of them in play. That's what makes these so kind of lifelong and interesting. And we can put it in the form of trolleys, but really, did you guys know that the original Trolley Problem by Philippa Foot in 1967 was not about trolleys? That wasn't the moral question that she was really burning in her mind. It was about abortion. So that's exactly how these got off the ground. So it's not that, oh, it's a fun trolley problem, we can perhaps maybe apply it to other real life examples, one of them being abortion. No, like the whole reason this is a thought experiment, and she applied it directly to the case of abortion. And in that case, she was arguing that to kill a fetus actively is worse than letting a fetus die or letting a mother die. In the case where a mother's life is at stake. I think that's what she said. Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm going to go to a couple other comments here. If an action is a form of action, then you're not just a bystander, are you? See, that's the thing. I was saying, like, the early example I gave was this, like, inaction, doing nothing, that is, can be morally weighty. It can be something that you are morally blameworthy for. Like if you do nothing. Like, why? Well, if you do nothing when you should have done something, that is morally blameworthy. The example I gave earlier is like if you're in an apartment and then next door you hear domestic violence dispute, and then you hear the sound of like somebody, what sounds like somebody getting stabbed, and then you just choose not to call 911. You wake up the next day and you realize, oh, there was somebody who got killed next door. That is a clear example of an instance where you did nothing when you should have done something, and that is absolutely morally blameworthy. The question here is, well, are you doing nothing when you should have done something? And it's not as clear because, well, the doing nothing would be not pulling the lever. When you should have done something, the should have done something is to pull the lever. So it's not as clear like if you should be pulling the lever. So that's where so in general that principle holds, but in here, when the alternative option is to pull the lever and to actively kill another person, it's not as clear as that you should do that thing. Right, choosing to do nothing is choosing to not actively kill. That's true. Yeah, you can construe it as a choice, but it's still technically speaking a failure to action. You say here, I would consider that an action. You were brought into a moral situation and decided to look the other way. That's an action. Yeah. Well, technically speaking, I would evaluate it this way. It is accessible, morally speaking, right? So I don't need to call it an action in order to assess it. Like, it is morally accessible. But I don't think, technically speaking, it's an action because you're not acting, properly speaking. And action is where you're intending to do something, you do something, you opt for something with your will. So there's no, technically speaking, yes, we can say kind of off the cuff, you're really acting even though you're not acting. Like it kind of sounds paradoxical and cool, but if we want to be really precise, since it's not a movement of the will, I don't will something and then carry that out in my actions, it technically speaking isn't an action. All right, so, okay, that happens all the time. Self-defense, defense of others from the threat of immediate death or crippling injury. I'd have to see what you mean by that. Huh. I wonder what that refers to. That happens all the time in self-defense. That is the choosing to do nothing or failing to do something. Anyway, okay. You might want to write that out, and then I'll keep going. Okay, so this hypothesis one's an interesting one. It's more interesting than I thought when I first put it up because I thought it was just like a funny twist. And now that I'm thinking, oh, there's another layer here where that trolley might not be the trolley that ends up killing the guy. That's an interesting twist. So, in other words, you might not be morally culpable for it. So, anyway. All right, so here's an interesting one that I don't really care for, but I still numbered it among the trolley problems because it is a legitimate one. It's not a funny one. And some of you more math types and rational logic types might have fun with this one. It's just not my wheelhouse, but I'll put it up anyway for you. So I call it decision theory trolley problem. I toyed with the idea of calling it maybe liar's paradox because it's also kind of a paradoxical situation, but it wasn't really a liar's paradox. So let's just read it. The train is headed towards B. Okay. The two people on B are the wife and child of the man on A. If the man on A, which is not you apparently, okay, yeah, you are marked up here in the canonical normal spot. Okay, if the two people on B, that's your family. Sorry, no, that's not your family. That's the wife and kid of the guy on A on the bottom track. Okay, see, this is why this is really puzzling. Okay, if the man on A pulls his lever, the train will head to C to throw in a real puzzle, right? Because he wants to divert the track from his wife and child. If you pull your lever first, the train will head towards A instead. Okay, that seems obvious that you should probably just pull the lever then, right? But, right, because here's the thing, if you do, obviously you have to think this guy A, this is why I thought it was like a liar's paradox, because this guy A will absolutely, you can guarantee, going to want to save his wife and child. So B is not even an option. If you eliminate B, it's just going to be between A and C. And so, unfortunately, it's going to have to go down A, I think, for most people. Now, here's the trick. Me, as not being a utilitarian, and I canonically or normally or usually go with option B, this one's a real puzzling one for me because if I just decide to do nothing, doing nothing will make the track go down track A, the trolley go down track Sorry, not A. It will go down track C. It will go down the one that kills the most people if I do nothing. And honestly, I think I might have to do that. I might have to do nothing. And knowing that it's not going to go down A, knowing that that guy on A will flip it over to C. And yeah, if he flips it over to C, then here's the interesting puzzling thing as well. He is now morally responsible for putting himself into the series of events, and he is morally responsible for killing all those people on C. So interestingly, this has an interesting outcome. So if I do nothing, I'm actually not responsible for anything. It's not going to kill B. The guy on A is morally responsible to everything. He's responsible for everything. The setup is I do nothing. It's not going to go on B because that guy on A will flip it to C. Right? Yeah. It is just the original scenario, basically with the added element. You're right about that. Yeah, these are all variations. This is an interesting one because the guy's choice, let's think about the guy's choice on A. This is not you, but the guy's choice on A. His choice is dependent on my choice. And if I flip the switch, it's going down C. Sorry, if I flip the switch, I keep thinking the bottom one is C. If I flip the switch, it's going down A. I'm not going to do that because it would kill more people than on B. And then I would be morally responsible for it. So if I flip the switch. So if I do nothing, the only options are B or C because I can guarantee that guy is going to flip the switch. Because he's not going to let it go down B and kill his family. He will flip the switch and it'll go down C. But the interesting twist is that I'm not going to be morally responsible for that. So that's really interesting. Yeah. I lean to A. Yeah, the problem is leaning to A, now you're morally responsible for directly killing, actively killing 4 people instead of doing nothing. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I did nothing in the original, and so I don't, and now thinking through it, it's actually got a real nice virtue to it by doing nothing. By doing nothing, you actually have the most good happen in this scenario because you're more, not only, well, first of all, more people will die. I'm sorry, that's not the most good, but you personally are morally absolved because you didn't do anything at all. So at least with respect to you being morally culpable or guilty of anything, what else would you have done? Killed people? But like, again, like it was going to go to B, you would have done nothing. You could just refuse to act and then, yeah. All right. Have to be inactive just to rest from the incredible moral pressure. All right. Good to see you, Taurus. Yeah. He said, I need to go bring my lamb from pasture. I really hope that that's a real lamb and a real pasture. Not just like a euphemism for something. Yeah. 3 other people is the hardest part for me. It's kind of scenario happened in my house all the time where people are various parts of my house and the people's emotions in the trolley is my son and daughter. I can believe that. And you got to go to A to stop that guy. Well, the problem with that, interestingly, is say I pull the lever and it goes to A. I'm now morally responsible for killing 4 people. Whereas before I wouldn't be morally responsible, technically speaking, for killing anybody. Save the many. Yeah, this is hard. Like if you're a utilitarian, this puts incredible pressure on you as a utilitarian. Now you are directly responsible for killing not just one person, not just like you're killing 4 people in this case. And you could like rationalize it and say, well, I'm killing a potential killer, but like, he's only a killer insofar as he's killing just like you were killing. Like, and you're the one who actually killed, not him. So like you can't really rationalize that. Yeah. Okay. Then maybe just go to C to save the man on A from doing something immoral. That's virtuous. Yeah. The thing here, you have to wonder, like, you have to question and ask yourself, how do you get the trolley on track C? right here, trolley only goes to track C if it's going to track B first, right? Because the pressure of guy on A is going to see it going toward his family on B. Again, you did nothing to get it to B. And now he is going to switch it to track C. You, with your lever, don't have control over track C. I think that's an important detail. Your lever does not control track C. Only his does. Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you, Taurus. Have a good night. All right. We're going to look at a couple more here. So that was a really interesting one. Here's another one that I do not care for. I didn't even number it because I'm like, no, this is not me. But again, some of you like mathy types, and this is about infinity. I'm not even going to read it, but if you wanted to pause it and come back or just find the meme online, go for it. I don't know if this is meant to be serious or not because I don't really understand infinity, but have fun with it. All right, but this one's an interesting one. So I would take this to be a real one, okay? Pro-life trolley problem. It reads as follows. You are pro-life. A trolley is headed towards a 3-week-old fetus. You can pull the lever to set it on a different rail to save the fetus, right? And now it's going to not kill the fetus, okay? But it will cut the blue wire and drop 5 condoms of 5 penises. They're about to have intercourse. Do you pull the lever? I'm absolutely pulling the lever. I don't know. Like this, I guess this is meant to be funny. But it does raise really interesting questions about contraception that a Catholic would care about. And let's suppose that I do care about contraception and I think contraception is evil, okay? I do think it's wrong. And for that, like just look up Catholic sexual ethics. It frustrates the natural end of sex. So I do think it's wrong. So let's suppose I think it's wrong, and I do, to use contraception like these condoms, right? This would be an actual moral dilemma for me. I would think that diverting the trolley onto the top track would be a bad thing, but it clearly is not going to be as bad as killing the fetus. So I think probably who like made this stupid meme did not mean for this to be serious. They probably meant it just to troll. Like, oh, clearly these are both not wrong. Well, I happen to think they're both wrong. I happen to think that contraception is wrong and killing a 3-week-old fetus is wrong. So, joke's on you, I guess, buddy. But yeah, I really doubt that the person who actually made this considered both those things wrong, and that's why they were just trying to troll. So, in any case, yeah, I think it's interesting, but the grave moral evil would be killing a human life on the bottom. So I'm going to divert that trolley every time. Okay, that's like acting like you're shaping predetermined fate. You aren't a person before the conception. What do you mean if it gets? I assume you're talking about if it gets diverted. Oh, or you're talking about? Sorry, not the trolley problem. I assume you're talking about contraception. Yeah, so contraception in Catholic moral teaching is not wrong because it's hurting a person. It's not hurting a person. There's no person present. Like a sperm cell and an egg cell are not persons. It's only at the fusion of them that they form new DNA and it's now a person. So there's no persons involved that would make contraception wrong. That's not why it's wrong. It's wrong because it frustrates the natural telos, or the natural end of the human act of sex. So, and it's playing God, and it would be akin to another appetite. Sex is an appetite. Eating, hunger is an appetite, right? It would be akin to frustrating the natural end or telos of eating. In order to do that, like imagine I was binging myself, or like, what do they call that? Yeah, they call it binge eating or something. Like you just force feed yourself and then you throw it up. Or imagine, I don't know, even more terribly, like I just eat, but then I don't let it go through my digestive system. I just, in my esophagus, I have a little tube that I like to just, funnel out my food so that it doesn't get, it gets a little bit of nutrients through the osmosis through, being soaked up in my cells in my mouth and so on, but it's not all that much. And in other words, I'm putting a layer in between me and the natural end of that food or of that eating process. So that would be just as awkward, weird, and bad as contraception. So if we think it's odd or wrong or bad in the first eating example, we should think it's awkward, wrong, or bad in the sex example. Yeah. 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 Because distorting sex from reproduction and changing its purpose. Yeah. Yeah. It's divorcing sex from procreation or reproduction. Absolutely. Yeah. I should do a video more on that. I'm actually, guys, I'll share the announcement about this on my page, so look out on my posts for it. But I'm giving a talk at Gonzaga University in the weekend after Thanksgiving on abortion. And yeah, they're flying me out there to give a talk to them. And then in the spring, I'm going to go on a multi-campus tour, probably throughout the Pacific Northwest. I'll fly back across the country from the East Coast back over there, and then do several more campuses in Washington, Oregon State, and Idaho. So yeah, so be on the lookout for that. It'll be recorded, and I'll be able to either live stream or record it and then I'll share it to my channel as well. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah. All right. So let's keep going from this pro-life one. Harambe. This is ridiculous. I know it's meant to be a joke, but it does raise like a really interesting question. If you pull the lever, Harambe will die. This is kind of an outdated one, but it was still on the internet. Internet's forever, guys. Harambe, the gorilla that got killed, right? Because some kid jumped into the exhibit with it. All right, if you pull the lever, Harambe will die. If you don't, his existence will never be appreciated, right? Because think about how many people loved Harambe after he died. What do we value higher, Harambe or the idea of Harambe? So, I think it's hilarious. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to pull the lever, but it is interesting. Like some people will be like, yeah, well, he lived on greater after his death. So maybe in hindsight, probably a utilitarian would be like, look, the greatest good came about in the world when Harambe died. And so we should flip the switch and kill Harambe so that he lives on in our hearts forever, I guess, or at least for a couple of years while this meme was relevant. So that's an interesting one. All right, here we get into some joke ones, and then we'll round out and finish this stream out. So I've got about 5 or 6 more slides left, so hang tight. Okay, so this is one of my favorite memes, actually. Bay come over, can't right now, experiencing moral dilemma. My entire family isn't home. I know. And there they are again. I love that drawing. It's so hilarious to me. Somebody did this in Microsoft Paint or something. That's my favorite meme right there. It's hilarious. Harambe is going to die anyway, just like us all. Yeah. So he's going to be greater if he dies sooner and for a purpose, right? So that's very serious. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next one. This one, guys. I numbered this one as a real one because, okay, shopping cart trolley problem. Or there's no dire emergency. Do you accept your duty to return the cart even though you gain nothing? Come on, guys. This is really calling you out. Actually, Ben Shapiro, I think, said this, or maybe it was Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh, one of those guys, who said I think it might have been Ben Shapiro. He says he judges people character by whether they return the shopping cart. And like that would be a really like telltale sign of their character. Yeah. And it's like I kind of sympathize with that. I kind of understand, and it makes sense. Like, do you do something that when nobody else is looking and when it's of no value to you, do you do something that you ought to do? And not even a moral ought. Not even a moral ought, but an etiquette ought. This is an interesting one, right? Right. You should return the cart. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, but you got to walk, right? You got to walk. You got to return. Can't you just like pop it up on the curb, you know? Say you're at parked at one of those curbs with the grass and everything. You just pop it right up on there. When the cart stall is like, you know, maybe 50 yards away. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Be the change you want to see in the world and all that. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, I really sympathize with this. I think more people should do this, to be honest with you. Yeah, not much to say here, but I think that there's great power in the simple things and in the things that are not required of you, right? I could go on about this, about like virtues. There are certain virtues that are virtues, even though you're not morally required to do them, and it's not hard to do them. Think like gratitude. Like you should say thank you to people. You're not going to get in trouble if you don't, but if you did it, you would be a better person for doing it, right? For cultivating that gratitude. or just like with respect to God, cultivating gratitude with respect to God. Like you could get by without doing it, but you'd be a different person, right? And the same thing with these small acts, these small little things, right? Acts of etiquette, small acts of justice and fairness and so on. If you or everyone didn't, cars would be everywhere. That's true. Yeah. I wish more people in my city thought like you did, but unfortunately, there is a shortage of people that think like that. All right, got a couple more here. This is funny as well. Oh no, that ship with all those people is sinking. Help us. Don't worry, I can save them. Hooray. I just need to kill one of you to activate my powers. Wait, what? Trolley Man is one of the worst superheroes ever. It's terrible. That's not even a good one, but that's just for fun. Here's another one. Finally, guys, we've reached the end. This, and I've got one more slide, two more slides after this, all right? But this is the final solution. It's finally over. You've solved the trolley problem. You've killed the person responsible for tying all those people to trolley tracks. It's finally over. This goes with what somebody said earlier, like, who in the world would be doing all these things? Nobody ever really asked that, yeah. And then this other one, as it should be. You're the trolley. There's nobody on the tracks. Where will you go? You know, and that's why we had this little journey together. You and me and all of us. Where are we going to go in life, right? Just a little, life lesson here. Yeah. So that wraps us up. Now, in another future video, I am going to click through this. If you'd like to get there before I do and do it for fun, go ahead and remember this page. And you can't really copy and paste it, but you can replicate it into your browser. Maybe I'll put it in the description. And then next time when we see each other, I will do a future video on that, probably after we get back from Thanksgiving. So a couple things to note in coming up. Let's see. Okay, a couple items to note. Here's my page. All right, obviously on the live tab, go to the live tab. That's the Trolley Problem one we're now. And then over here, this on Wednesday is my standing appointment call-in show, office hours. I want you to be there and be able to give me your 20-minute spiel without interruption. There'll be a little interruption because it's a discussion on your take on the trolley problems and your solutions. Which one was your favorite? Which one wasn't? And then this one on Friday, the Friday before Thanksgiving, we're going to do another AI session where I just walk you through how I'm using AI to look for jobs or for career advice when it comes to a CV, resume, that sort of thing. I found some tips and tricks that I find quite useful. And if you think that you might benefit from that, please be there for that one. I did the previous one right here on how to use it for your homework or just research questions. Okay, so this one's mostly around homework. And then this one over here is going to be mostly on the job market. So make sure that you're here for that. So, okay. With that, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I guess down the path of least resistance. Good. And then your own existential Thomas the Train. I love that. I love that. There should be, if I were like a comic artist, I would try to get a Thomas the Train engine that was look like Thomas Aquinas. That would be amazing. That would be so amazing. Yeah, we got to farm that out to AI or somebody like that. Yeah. So yeah, great stream. Appreciate that. This was fun. I appreciate it. Yeah, we had a lot of moral principles. Like these are fun to think about, but in order, like I tell students, I'm like, in order to think about practical applied ethics really well, you do have to do some of the heavy lifting with like ethical theories, meta ethics, that sort of things. And I hope it wasn't too boring and we didn't get too far into the weeds. Where we did, just skip over it. Or just, if something struck your interest and you're like, I want to know more about that. Well, then now you can. And if you want to come back to next time during the call-in, make sure that you bring questions, right? And that'll be really fun. So if you liked this stream, please leave a comment, like it, leave a comment, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, please. And be there for my next streams, of course. And just leave a comment. I want to know which trolley problem was your favorite. So let me know in the comments. And I will see you guys next on Wednesday, a couple days from now. And then on Friday. And then we are breaking for Thanksgiving. I'll be off the internet all Thanksgiving with my family. So, all right. Blessings to you all. God bless. And take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.